GM. Welcome, everybody. How are you? If you can hear me in the back, say GM. All right, there we go. I'm Gabriel. I'm the founder and managing partner of Graph Paper Capital. We are an early stage venture fund and Web3 accelerator. But today, the spotlight is on these four panelists. I've been really looking forward to this session. So before we do intros, just by show of hand, can we just see how many founders are in the room currently? Okay, show of hands. Okay, great. And then how many are aspiring founders or thinking about, starting something, or you got out like a side gig or something? Okay, all right, good. So kind of like helps us figure out the flow. All right, so why don't we just start with a round of intros?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Gaby Goldberg. I'm an investor at TCG Crypto. We're actually spun out of a media and consumer fund called the Chernin Group, which entered the crypto space in 2018 following their existing consumer theses. So started with OpenSea and then Dapper Labs with NBA Top Shot, and then led the Series A of an NFT horse racing game called Zed Run. And from there decided, kind of wanted to spin out a more focused and intelligent practice exclusively focused on crypto. So we've been around for about 2 years, and so a lot of this is my first time learning too. So I'm excited to share kind of the raw takes of what it's been like over the last 2 years. But we focus primarily on the application layer, but generally thinking about what is it going to take for crypto to reach consumer scale, and also what does scale even look like in crypto?
Thanks. I'm Bianca, and I'm actually not an investor. I think I'm the only one on the panel that's not an investor, but the reason I'm here is what we're doing. I work for Near. I'm in operations. We're building a platform that is meant to connect investors to founders in a more streamless way. And so my insights are a bit on both sides of what's happening right now. So nice to meet everybody.
Hey everyone, super excited to be here. My name is Kinjal. I'm an investor at Blockchain Capital. We are a generalist fund in the space that's been around since 2013. So I've been investing for a long time. I joined the team about 5 years ago and focused pretty broad, but eventually kind of zoned in more on consumer. Yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Bhutoria. I'm also an investor at Castle Island Ventures. We've been around since around 2018. Our focus is primarily on infrastructure, picks and shovels, exclusively focused on the crypto space. Yeah, very excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Rhea, why don't we actually start with you? It's been a tough 12 to 14 months being a builder in the space in crypto. I think a lot of us are kind of like gut checking ourselves about some of the assumptions that we made. What are you seeing out there right now? What's the temperature of the market? What are you seeing in terms of like what builders are building? What's getting you really excited right now?
Yeah, a category that I'm really excited about that's been mentioned a number of times throughout the day is around wallets and onboarding and helping consumers, but also institutions enter the space in a more safe, secure, and seamless way. We've seen a lot of work around this as it relates to account abstraction and making smart contract wallets more standardized and making it easier for developers to use smart contract wallets within their applications. But simultaneously, we've seen a lot of work around MPC and using MPC to make wallets safer, to make applications safer. I think we're seeing more of a transition also towards, wallets not being the way in which you access applications, and seeing kind of like a blending of wallets and applications, more akin to how things are done in Web 2. You don't sign into a third-party service before you sign into an application. And shout out to Capsule. They are doing some really exciting work around that. And then, I think another trend that we've been really excited about as a firm is just using crypto rails to bring more legitimacy to traditional financial operations and to centralized institutions. I think there's some exciting ways that you can leverage some of the features that drew us to the space around accountability, account transparency, around proving that platforms are actually solvent, using cryptographic solutions and integrating them into centralized offerings. And then a third category that we're pretty excited about is the the entrance of traditional brands into the crypto space through things like digiphysical experiences, but also the creation of native Web3 brands that are, that started off maybe as NFT projects, but then are building like a grounds up brand from that and building really interesting experiences around that.
Yeah. Kinjal, I might just ask you the same question. I mean, given your perspective in the venture economy or ecosystem, and also, your work with Komorabi, the investment DAO, what are you seeing in the landscape? What do you think has shifted over the last 12 to 14 months as we're kind of like, hopefully, coming out of this bear market that we've been experiencing, and what gets you excited right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that builders are here to stay. I think that's been evident over the past 18 months. We're all here, which is great. I'm super excited about that. I think that's really been the biggest trend, I would say, is that you really sort of understand who's solving, who's here to solve the right sort of challenges. Yeah. In terms of areas that we're excited about, I think, 5 years ago, the biggest sort of issue on most people's minds was scalability, right? Was how can we actually get some of these costs down in order to transact on blockchains? If it's not 100% solved today, but there is a clear path to solving that. And so to me, that is a huge win. We knew that was 3 to 5 years in the making, and it feels like we're there. And so I'm very, very excited about that. And I feel like the next sort of frontier is privacy and onboarding, like Ria mentioned. And so I think focusing on those two big challenges next is really where I'm excited about right now.
That's cool. Maybe a place that we can go, Gaby, is you've done a lot of writing and talking about consumer applications. With some of the scalability solutions that are coming, what do you see as like some of the interesting frontiers that are taking place in terms of like consumer dApps or consumer applications, touching real end users?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I'll take a step back, which is just learnings I've had going through these market cycles. And I think one area where I've actually shifted my perspective in thinking about opportunities for consumer within crypto is when I came into the job, I really felt like my goal was to quite literally onboard people into crypto. And this was talked about during the wallets panel as well, of like, okay, I'm gonna meet my friends and I'm gonna teach them, how to write down their seed phrase and don't share it with anyone, but also don't forget about it and store it in your drawer or something, and then you're gonna be onboarded to crypto and it's gonna be amazing. And then you actually get there and what are they actually doing? So generally the shift I've seen is crypto started, with regards to consumer specifically, consumer crypto was a platform. And now I'm seeing it more and more, that still holds true, but I'm seeing an expansion where now crypto is used as a tool. And the consumer experience might be something totally different. So for example, we're investors in a company that launches fan clubs for existing artists. So some of the artists that are a part of this platform and use this tool are like My Morning Jacket, Tycho, Sigur Rós, Illenium. I would say the majority of those people don't care about crypto at all, like the folks who are in those fan clubs, but they enter by way of a free NFT. They have that level of ownership. It actually makes them more engaged. And so when you look at the communities that these artists had prior, whether it was on Discord or Reddit or another platform that they had, there's actually more fans that are a part of these communities. They stay more engaged and more retentive, and they actually want to spend more money. And so crypto is the tool that solves this problem, but I think most people would say that this company is not actually a crypto company, it's more of a consumer company. So I'm seeing more and more of those examples where crypto is just used as a tool that plugs in. And the other thing importantly is that it doesn't have to cut into an existing business model, but it might just add something net new on top. So you see a lot in Web3 music, just going off of this example, this future where maybe artists won't have labels or they won't have managers and royalties will be streamed to investors of that music. And I think there's definitely a space for that. And you're seeing it mostly within a crypto native context right now. But I also think there's a world where artists will use the existing stack that they already have, like these artists. They're not going to get rid of their label or their manager. Yep. But now by way of this product, supercharged by crypto, it adds something net new on top and it kind of grows the market in turn. So I'm seeing a lot of that. I think wallets and onboarding is a good example of how do you abstract that away as much as possible? So if you're onboarding someone to crypto, it doesn't need to be about crypto, but it's about what the point really is.
Yeah, that's great. I'd like to open this up for the entire panel, whoever wants to take a stab at it. And I'm going to try to thread the needle to come to near if I land this properly. How do you guys, and this is a conversation about real talk for the founders in the room, how do you guys think about adoption or traction for a Web3 company, especially around the consumer applications. I'd be curious to hear you guys, like, how you think through that and how you evaluate it.
I think the biggest thing for me is, can I explain it to my mom or my sister? Would I want to use it, right? I think we're all, at the end of the day, on our phones a lot. And so is this like additional product or app compelling enough that we want to pick it up and start using it? I think there's been sort of this like trend in crypto where we kind of feel like if you build it, they'll come. You know, this has happened cycle after cycle. And I think I'm hoping that moving forward, we're going to sort of learn a little bit of some of the lessons in the past. And really, I do feel like we're at a place where you can just build interesting products, and the crypto is in the background, and it's a rail, it's a tool, and I think that's really well served. So I really do think about now when I'm talking to any consumer founder is who's going to be using this? Will they get it? What does it solve? Am I excited to pick up my phone and use it, or pick up my laptop and use it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if anybody, yeah, please.
I think adoption in this space to date, at least at the application layer, has been, a number of people finding, just going back to this idea of like 100 or 1,000 top fans, or like 100 or 1,000 top users that are just like really religious about the use case and are going to be advocates for that application or use case. Yeah. That has proven true throughout bull and bear markets, whether it's, the example that Gaby mentioned around Web3 music and artists, using NFTs or creating DAOs to engage their fans in a more meaningful way, and then having those fans kind of be their word of mouth to onboard more people into the space and get them excited about that use case or application. Within DeFi, I think it's been, aside from like Uniswap, which I think is pretty widely adopted and useful to a lot of people, whether you're kind of like a novice trader or a more professional trader. But for a number of DeFi applications, they're catering, at least today, to a more of a niche audience of professional traders, right? So I think today the kind of the adoption that we're seeing is more around niche audiences that are very specific and will be super fans, and I hope to see that grow and expand as these applications prove themselves out with these audiences.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great framework.
Yeah, I have very similar thoughts to both of these. I think what Kinjal said around, like, if we build it, they will come, is something that is very pervasive in the ecosystem of relying on this, like, inevitability of the principles. I've even been seeing it over the last couple weeks. It's super top of mind, thinking about decentralized social. And you think about the values of it, like owning your audience, having transparency around an algorithm, like all of that stuff, it's more true now than ever. Like, you look at Twitter, you look at Reddit, you see all of this stuff happening with centralized social platforms. And I think it's like more now than ever we understand why it's important, but that doesn't mean that it's inevitable, right? How do you build distribution? How do you get there? So on that front, and I mean, going back to what I said in my previous answer, thinking about this like onboarding notion, if you think about crypto consumer opportunities on kind of a spectrum, where on one side it's like very Web 2 sounding, like the music example I gave, and then on the other side it's like a Web 3 native consumer platform, like think Uniswap or something like that. We used to spend a lot of time in the middle, like that onboarding notion, and now we very much spend time on both sides of the spectrum, but try to spend as little time in the middle as possible. So what's a Web3 native consumer platform where there's provable passion that is kind of durable across market cycles? People are using these products no matter what. And then ideally, we can underwrite the fact that maybe the market would never change, right? Let's say the bull market were never to come back. Can you still build a business there? Obviously, we don't think that's going to happen, but it helps when you kind of think about how big is this market really? Instead of a founder coming to say, well, like in 3 years, this is going to be huge, right? That's harder to underwrite. Then on the other side, what's something that doesn't feel like crypto at all? The users are not moving in and out of the space when the price of Bitcoin goes up or down, but uses crypto as a tool. In the middle is where I think it gets harder.
It's also a great beachhead market, and you have a set of users that are used to putting up with like the UX challenges, and so they're sticky.
They're already
Yeah. I want to bring Bianca into this conversation. So you and I actually were chatting, and I think Near's got an amazing ecosystem development thing happening with Horizon. You guys are seeing founders before they're even founders. You're seeing really early projects that are like at the very earliest stages. I'd love to hear some of the trends that you're seeing and the challenges that you see, like, founders trying to get from that 0 to 1 stage in the earliest phases.
Sure. So we just launched April 26th, but I think like speaking to onboarding, speaking to wallets and everything else, like Near is working on becoming blockchain operating systems. So there's a front end and a back end that's seamless for users. So it makes more sense to onboard. You don't have to tell them seed phrase, this, that, and the other. So that's one aspect of making Horizon easier. But the thing that we're realizing is that what we need to do is make sure that founders know what they need when they need it, and making sure that they have access to accelerator programs right on platform that they can apply to that are fitting for them, in addition to making it very easily searchable for any of the investors that are on the platform to find the projects that their companies are looking to underwrite, versus having to sort through 500 different meetings in a month-long period and not even coming up with one project that really fits what you're looking for. You can do that all on platform. So we're really trying to just make that whole from pre-MVP idea stage all the way to I'm getting users and now I need to know how to get more users. Do I have the right product fit? To meeting the investors to keep them going, all within chain and all very simple.
Yeah, startup building really is a team sport, and so I think from what it sounds like, you guys are really trying to take the approach of finding how do you plug founders around all the components of the team that they might need with the Horizon product. Yeah, Gaby, I saw your tweet the other day that there's something in the water at the CeeLo camp or something like that. I'd love for you to speak about like when early stage founders come out of some of these ecosystems. What are some of the things that you see that like you think it's a good time for them to start approaching an investor like yourself, or what might be some signals where they're not quite ready to engage in that conversation?
Yeah.
And real talk for the founders in the room.
For sure. It's a good question. It's also so funny. I just posted a tweet. I feel like I've met so many founders coming from the Cello ecosystem, and we've invested in founders who used to be a part of the Cello ecosystem, and then all of the comments are like, stop pumping your Cello bags. And I was like, no, I think the founders are just great. But it like speaks to like posting things about crypto on Twitter, which is funny. I mean, to your point of when they should reach out, we invest early stage. We like to lead seed rounds. Our average check size is 2.5. And so the earlier we meet a founder, the better. And then ideally, when it comes to the point that they're fundraising, we don't need to necessarily have a formal diligence process because the work has already been done. And it's also very hard meeting a founder when they say, oh, like we want to close this in 2 weeks, or even we want to close this in 3 weeks or a month, because depending on the amount of diligence that the fund likes to do, you don't want to be caught up in that FOMO cycle. And then again, like on the real talk, I think the one thing that turns me off from a fundraising process is hearing about like naming other funds that are, in talks with them. Like I have one story from, this was a while ago, but I always think about it. A founder met me and they were like, well, by the way, we need to hear ASAP because we have a term sheet from Sequoia. And I was like, oh, like, you should take that. Like, that sounds awesome. And then they're like, well, no, we really are trying to, see. And I'm like, okay, like, do you have the term sheet or not? Like, ideally, you don't want to be a part of shopping this round. You ideally want to get back to building too. So, the most you can kind of build these relationships within the ecosystem without distracting yourself, because obviously it's like a ton of work and fundraising is annoying. It's helpful at least on our side of the table. The big things at seed stage are like, obviously the team and who are you going to be working with, especially if you want to spend a lot of time with that partnership. There are some funds that are less hands-on or maybe have a platform that is the value add. And then the other thing is thinking about the market and how big can this really go. Oftentimes the product that we're investing in either doesn't quite exist yet, or it might end up looking very different, which we've already seen is like, a lot of the companies we work with look very different today than what they did 2 years ago. So the market and the team are the most important for us, but really it comes down to the people, I think, is the biggest thing.
Got it. Okay. People first, second, and third. Kinjal, I'd love to ask you and get your opinion on where are you seeing, and explain for the founders in the room, Where are valuations? What are deal structures looking like? I mean, there was a lot of like safe plus token warrant stuff that I saw, and a lot of investors would push founders to launch a token, whether or not it even made sense. What are you seeing? I mean, you see quite a bit in the market and ecosystem. What are things looking like, both in terms of structure, but also valuations and terms?
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of structure, the market really, I think, has sort of come to the conclusion that a safe with a token warrant is the best structure because it provides a lot of optionality, right? So it's not, that doesn't mean that you have to issue a token. It gives you sort of coverage on both the equity and the token side, and I think that flexibility is great for funds and foreign founders. So I really do think it's taken a lot of iteration, right? For folks might remember the SAFT. They might remember just like the general ICO market back in 2017. I think those are not here anymore for some really good reasons. We have a lot of precedents there, and I think safe plus token warrant is just really protective, frankly. In terms of issuing a token, I think we've learned a lot. I can't speak to necessarily investors pushing founders to get tokens, but I do think there's a lot changing in the regulatory environment in the States today. We had a really big ruling this week around XRP. We're getting some days we're getting more clarity, some days we're getting less clarity. So I do think that the token conversation, it really does become one that you kind of have to have case by case. There isn't like a blanket rule. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of founders sort of hit pause or wait in terms of just regulatory clarity and where they want to issue a token. But I do think that hopefully over the next 12 to 24 months, we'll hear more. I mean, I guess the last piece on valuation, I think valuations have definitely come down. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think there's still probably a bit more of the sort of bear market to kind of see through, I guess I would say. And valuations were extremely elevated to the point where I really do think it was at the detriment of teams themselves who are now looking to fundraise today and realizing that they haven't quite, their previous like fundraising rounds don't necessarily add up. And so I think that really just ends up hurting founders in the long run.
We just saw a great session on negotiating for like salary. Since we're on the topic, I'd love to get with your founder hat on, or with your investor hat on. How much room is there for a founder to negotiate with an investor? Is there room? Like, how do you think about that? Because this is a long-term business partnership that you're going into. So you want the vibes to be good, but also, right? It's a business transaction. So like, can you kind of dispel that maybe a little bit for the founders in the room? How do they negotiate, or how should they be thinking about negotiating with their investor?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, there's always room for negotiation. I think that's like a general life rule. I think in terms of where this market is today, it's really important to kind of go into a fundraising round and decide what your priorities are. Are you really trying to optimize for the right partner? Are you trying to optimize for the least amount of equity that you're selling? Like, what exactly are you hoping to sort of get out of a particular round? And then keep that in mind when you're going into negotiations. I do think sometimes conversations can come down to very, very small sort of, very small, whatever, dollar amounts or percentage points, and if you kind of have a North Star, I think it'll be really helpful. Yeah,
I love telling our founders all the time, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And actually, I'd love to bring Ria into this conversation. So what should founders expect from their VC aside from just writing a check and giving them capital? Like, what are some things that you think every founder in here should be expecting of their investor, or asking for, or looking for as they're approaching these conversations?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously different venture firms have different value propositions. I think Gaby mentioned there are some firms that have a really large platform team. They can provide help around marketing. Others can provide help around technical research and programming and engineering. Some firms provide help around their network and experience that they have in past lives, building in a similar category that they've built in, and being able to bring that experience and network to the partnership. Some funds bring sweat equity to the table where they literally sit down in strategy sessions, product sessions with the founders, with the team, and provide their expertise. So I think it very much depends on, going back to Kinjal's point, like when you start the process of fundraising, identifying what exactly you're optimizing for and what exactly you need help with at that stage in the life cycle of the company, because that changes very much over the life cycle of the company, and really trying to find a partner that can provide that kind of skill set and experience beyond just capital, because capital is just very much commoditized now.
Yeah, right. I'd love for you to just show your book. Like, what do you guys help founders with that you back and support? Like, where do you guys lean in at Castle Island Ventures?
Yeah, our background is very institutional, so we have spent a lot of time at traditional firms in the finance space. We bring a lot of institutional experience in our network. So going back to the point about sitting down with our founders that are kind of catering to that audience and helping them understand that market segment and really sell into that segment, and bringing those partners from our past life to the table as customers and future investors, that's definitely where we shine.
I love it. Awesome. So in prep for this panel, I reached out to the Twitter community to ask, the ecosystem what they wanted me to ask you guys. So maybe we'll just do a couple of community questions. I don't know how we're doing on time, Maggie. Okay, all right. Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, okay. They're gonna record me off. All right. How about for the panel, what advice do you have for emerging founders to help them survive an economic or industry downturn? Maybe some of the best advice you've ever given a founder, or the best advice you've ever gotten. I think a couple of us have seen some bear markets.
I think what I would say is starting to think about a bear market during a bull market.
Great advice.
Because,
yes.
Founders, obviously, it's much easier to raise capital during a bull market, but being really critical from the get-go about where do we need to spend our money, doing a scenario analysis about like how much runway do we have if we enter into a bear market in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and really being critical, especially at the early stages. I think the way you succeed is survival. You just have to keep showing up, keep being at the table, and just being really critical about managing expenses, because that is the number one thing. Is if you can, keep burn low and keep the team alive and excited, obviously, during a bear market, that is what is going to, get you through to the other end.
Love it.
Definitely +1 to everything Ria just said. I think I would just add also just being really ruthless about focus, whether it's a bull or a bear. I think there's just so many distractions, in particular in crypto. There's just like lots of shiny new objects. And I think as a founder, it can be really challenging when you're not only trying to build a company, but you're also trying to sort of manage an ecosystem that has a lot of ups and downs, and how that might impact your business. And there's a lot of things you can't control, like regulation and headlines. And so focusing on what you can control and just ruthlessly prioritizing that.
Great. Bianca, anything?
Yeah, I think I would say, especially for early founders who are just getting started, is not being afraid to ask other people who are experts in different fields for help in things that you're not an expert in. You're really great, you have a great idea, but you don't know if you're solving a problem in the market or if there's a market for it. And it's really important to invest what you can, time-wise and financially, in making sure that you answer those questions before you keep pushing forward and trying to get investors in that.
Yeah, I would say on the investor side of things, whether it's like a board meeting or just meeting with your investors, make sure that those times are helpful for you and not helpful for the investors. So, if you have 30 minutes with them, it might make you feel better if you spend the time saying, don't worry, we're still excited, if the investor is saying negative things to you about the market. Really, you should use that time to get perspectives from them on what they're seeing at a more high level, like the 30,000-foot view of the ecosystem, and then also what they think about the business. And I guess there's kind of two sides of it, where I think in the majority of the cases, if you're excited about what you're building and you see the vision, and it's just a matter of kind of getting through the market, stay the course and try not to listen to whether it's like your parents or investors who might not be crypto native, or just folks in the ecosystem who are telling you to stop. We even have LPs, for example, who, we're their first time having allocation into a crypto native firm, and we even hear things from them, and I kind of empathize with how founders feel. But then there's a small portion of cases where maybe you're building something and your perspective has changed on where the opportunity is for a product like that in market. And then in that sense, my advice would be, if you feel that way and you're no longer excited about what you're building, don't rely on, don't kind of think about all of the work you've already put in. Think about how much time you have left and where you see the opportunity going forward. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin.
Great advice. I have like 20 more questions, but I think we're getting hooked off the stage. Is that it? Okay, got it, yeah. Guys, let's give it up for our amazing panel here. Incredible conversation. I certainly enjoyed this. I could ask you guys questions for like hours here, but thank you very much. Thank you, Maggie, for having us.